Disclaimer: this story is a fictional dramatization created for entertainment purposes only. While it explores deep human emotions such as love, betrayal, and heartbreak, it does not depict real individuals or actual events. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Viewer discretion is advised, as the story contains mature themes of relationships and infidelity. When I look back at my life before everything fell apart, one of the brightest parts was always her, my best friend. We met when we were just little girls in elementary school. From the very first day, when she lent me her colored pencils because I had forgotten mine, I felt like she was the kind of friend everyone wished for. Through high school heartbreaks, late-night talks, and dreams about our futures, she was always there. She wasn't just my best friend, she was my sister, my chosen family. As we grew older, life kept us close. When I met my husband, she was right there cheering me on, telling me how lucky I was to have found someone who adored me the way he did. And when he proposed to me, she was one of the first people I called, shrieking through the phone in excitement. She helped me pick out my wedding dress, stood beside me as my maid of honor, and held my hand when the tears of joy streamed down my face at the altar. She wasn't just a guest in my life, she was woven into it. Holidays were spent together, vacations often included her, and she even had a key to our house because that's how comfortable I felt with her. My husband adored her too, but in a way I thought was harmless. She was funny, outgoing, and always brought a light into any room she walked into. I trusted her completely, and I never thought for a second that trust could ever be misplaced. There were nights when she would join us for dinner, staying late into the evening, laughing at my husband's jokes as if she'd known him her whole life. I never thought twice about it because, in my heart, I believed she was family. If I had errands to run or late nights at work, I even asked her to keep me company at home. With him. That's how deep my trust went. I felt blessed. Blessed to have a best friend who understood me so well, and a husband who I thought loved me more than life itself. I used to tell people how lucky I was, how my best friend and my husband got along so well. Some women would kill for this kind of bond, I'd say with pride. Little did I know that the very bond once celebrated would one day become the reason my entire world shattered. But back then, in those early days, life felt perfect. I never once doubted her loyalty or his love. To me, we were inseparable, the three of us, a little family of our own making. And if someone had told me then that the very people I trusted the most would one day be the ones to betray me in the deepest way possible, I would have laughed. Because in my heart, she was my best friend. She was my sister. She was the last person I ever thought I could lose. When I first met my husband, it felt like fate. He wasn't the kind of man who swept me off my feet with grand gestures or empty promises. He was the kind of man who made me feel safe, grounded, and deeply loved. I met him at a friend's gathering, and what struck me most wasn't his looks, though he was undeniably handsome. It was his presence, calm, steady, and attentive. He listened when I spoke, really listened, as though my words mattered. That was something I wasn't used to, and it pulled me in. Our love story bloomed quickly but naturally. Weekend dates turned into late-night phone calls, and soon enough, we couldn't imagine life without each other. When he asked me to marry him, he did it in the simplest, most genuine way. No crowd, no spotlight, just the two of us on a quiet evening, with tears in his eyes as he slipped the ring on my finger. It wasn't flashy, but it was real, and it was perfect for us. Our wedding day was a dream. My best friend, of course, stood by my side, radiant as ever, holding my bouquet when my hands shook, whispering little jokes to calm my nerves before I walked down the aisle. And when I looked into my husband's eyes at the altar, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. I believed, with every fiber of my being, that this was the kind of love people spent their whole lives searching for. Marriage with him felt effortless in the beginning. We built a little home filled with laughter and warmth. We cooked dinner together, took silly weekend road trips, stayed up late talking about our dreams for the future. He would leave notes on the fridge that said things like, "Don't forget how beautiful you are," or, "I love you more today than yesterday." And my best friend? She was part of this picture too. She was there when we moved into our first home, helping us paint the living room walls. She was there on our anniversaries, often tagging along for our celebrations because we couldn't imagine leaving her out. It might sound strange, but I genuinely loved having her around, even in the most intimate milestones of our marriage. Looking back now, I wonder if that was my mistake, blending my worlds too seamlessly. But at the time, it felt perfect. My husband and my best friend got along effortlessly. They laughed at the same movies, debated over silly things like sports and politics, and sometimes even teamed up against me in playful arguments. I used to smile at that, thinking it was adorable, never realizing how close they were actually becoming. At night, I would lie in bed, my husband's arm draped over me, and think, this is it. This is the life I've always wanted. I didn't see any cracks. I didn't feel any shadows creeping in. All I saw was a future filled with love, stability, and companionship, with the two people I trusted most in this world right there beside me. If someone had whispered in my ear then, telling me that the love I cherished so much was already slipping through my fingers, I would have shaken my head in disbelief. Because as far as I knew, my marriage was perfect. My life was perfect. Or at least, it looked that way from the outside. What I didn't realize was that perfection has a way of hiding fractures, cracks that grow silently, waiting for the right moment to break everything apart. It started small, so small that at first, I brushed it off as my imagination. A little laugh shared between them that seemed longer than usual. A whispered conversation in the kitchen that stopped the moment I walked in. A quick glance exchanged during dinner that I couldn't quite decipher. My best friend had always been comfortable around my husband. She teased him, joked with him, even confided in him sometimes. And I never minded. Why would I? They were like family to me. But slowly, the tone of their interactions began to change. It wasn't obvious, at least not at first. But I knew her better than anyone, and I could sense when something was different. One evening, I came home earlier than expected from work. As I walked through the door, I heard them laughing together in the living room. It wasn't the laughter itself that bothered me. It was the closeness in it, the kind of laugh that comes from sharing a private joke. When I walked in, they both stopped, almost too quickly, as if they'd been caught doing something wrong. My husband cleared his throat and changed the subject. My best friend smiled at me, a little too brightly, and asked about my day. I told myself not to overthink it. They were my two favorite people in the world. Why should I doubt them? But doubt has a way of seeping in quietly, like water through a crack, and once it's there, it's impossible to ignore. Another time, I noticed my husband checking his phone late at night, his screen angled away from me. When I asked who he was texting, he casually said it was a coworker. But when he set the phone down on the nightstand, I saw her name flash across the screen. My heart skipped a beat, but I swallowed it down, convincing myself that maybe she just needed advice or was venting about something personal. After all, she was my best friend. Why would I think the worst? The little moments added up. They started having inside jokes I didn't understand. I would walk into a room and feel like I was interrupting something, though neither of them would admit it. At dinner, I noticed his eyes linger on her a little too long when she laughed. She, in turn, seemed to light up around him in a way I hadn't noticed before. I tried to talk myself out of the growing unease. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was overanalyzing every gesture, every glance, because I loved them both so much that I couldn't bear the thought of losing either of them. And yet, deep down, something in me whispered that things weren't the same. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes from doubting the people you trust most. I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was imagining it all, wondering if my marriage wasn't as perfect as I believed, wondering if my best friend, my sister in all but blood, was crossing lines I didn't want to see. I didn't know it then, but those little signs, those subtle changes, were the beginning of the unraveling. And soon, what started as whispers and glances would turn into something undeniable, something that would break my heart in ways I never thought possible. The shift from suspicion to certainty didn't happen overnight. It came in fragments, in moments that at first felt innocent, until they weren't. One Saturday evening, we hosted a game night at our house. A few friends came over, and of course, my best friend was there too. We were playing charades, everyone laughing and joking, but something about the way my husband and she interacted stood out. When it was her turn, he guessed her clues almost instantly, as though they shared a secret language no one else understood. Everyone laughed about how in sync they were, but for me, the laughter rang hollow. I sat there smiling, but inside, I felt a knot tightening in my chest. Later that night, after everyone else had left, she lingered as usual. I was in the kitchen cleaning up, and when I came back into the living room, I found them sitting too close on the couch. Not touching, not doing anything explicitly wrong, but the space between them, there was none. They shifted apart quickly when they saw me, and she stood up, saying she should head home. My husband kissed me goodnight a little too casually, as if to erase the moment I had just walked in on. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. But deep down I knew. The next boundary they crossed was harder to dismiss. One afternoon, I had to leave work early because I wasn't feeling well. When I walked into the house, I didn't hear the usual silence of an empty home. Instead, I heard hushed voices coming from the kitchen. My footsteps were soft, and maybe that's why they didn't hear me right away. I stopped just short of the doorway, my heart pounding in my ears. They were talking about me. "She's too trusting," my best friend whispered. My husband's response was low, almost guilty. "I know. I feel terrible." I wanted to step in, to demand answers right then and there, but fear held me back. Fear of what I might hear if I pushed further. So instead, I coughed loudly, pretending I had just come in. They froze, eyes wide, before forcing smiles and acting like everything was normal. But it wasn't. I knew it. The final straw came during a weekend trip we all planned together. It was supposed to be fun, just the three of us, like always. But one evening, I walked out of the cabin bedroom to find them on the porch, standing too close, their voices low, his hand lingering on her arm. The air between them was thick, charged with something I couldn't ignore anymore. When they noticed me, they pulled apart quickly, fumbling excuses, but the damage was done. That was the night I realized they had crossed a line. Maybe they hadn't gone all the way yet. I didn't have proof of that. But emotionally, they were already there. They had shared something behind my back, built a connection they didn't want me to see. And that hurt more than anything. Because betrayal doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with secrets. And secrets were exactly what they were keeping from me. I lay awake that night in the cabin, my back turned to my husband as he slept beside me. My best friend was just a few feet away in the next room. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own story. There's a saying that if you look for something hard enough, you'll find it. For weeks, I wrestled with my instincts, torn between trust and suspicion. Part of me wanted to hold on to the image of my perfect marriage and unbreakable friendship. But another part of me, the part that couldn't ignore the late-night texts, the stolen glances, the hushed tones, knew that the truth was right in front of me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. My husband had gone to shower, and his phone lay on the nightstand, buzzing with a notification. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, torn between respecting his privacy and protecting my own sanity. Finally, with trembling hands, I picked it up. What I saw confirmed every fear I had tried so hard to silence. It wasn't just messages. It was a thread of intimacy I was never meant to see. Words that once belonged to me, promises of love, secrets shared in the dark. They weren't outright graphic, but the affection, the longing, the familiarity between them, it was undeniable. She called him hers. He told her she was the only one who truly understood him. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. My world, the world I had built around trust, cracked right down the middle. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I waited, numb, my mind racing through every memory, every laugh, every moment that now felt like a lie. When he came out of the shower, towel draped around his shoulders, he smiled at me like nothing was wrong. That smile, the same one that once made me feel safe, now felt like a knife twisting in my chest. The next day, I couldn't pretend anymore. I called her, my best friend, the sister I had chosen. My voice shook as I asked her if there was something she needed to tell me. At first, she denied it, her tone light, dismissive, almost offended. But when I told her I had seen the messages, the silence on the other end of the line said everything. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen." Her words shattered me more than if she had screamed. Didn't mean for it to happen? As though love, loyalty, and trust could just slip by accident. When I confronted my husband that evening, he didn't deny it either. His face fell, his excuses weak and hollow. "I was lonely," he said. "You were busy with work." She was there. Those words gutted me. I had been working late. Yes, working for us, for the life we were building together. And she had been there because I invited her into our home, our marriage, our lives. In that moment, the weight of betrayal crushed me. It wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the people I loved most choosing each other over me. My best friend and my husband, the two pillars of my life, had conspired in silence, leaving me to stand in the ruins. The betrayal wasn't a sudden blow. It was death by 1,000 cuts. And now, with the truth laid bare, I finally felt every wound all at once. The night I confronted them was the night everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and friendship came crashing down. I had rehearsed the words in my head all day, but when the moment finally came, they spilled out in fragments, raw, jagged, and trembling with rage. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we had once shared meals and laughter. My husband sat across from me, his eyes heavy with guilt, while my best friend lingered by the doorway, her face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, none of us spoke. The silence was unbearable, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, I broke it. "How long?" My voice cracked, but the force behind it was undeniable. My husband shifted in his seat, his gaze falling to the floor. "A few months," he admitted, almost in a whisper. I turned to her, the woman I had trusted with every secret, every joy, every heartbreak. "You were supposed to be my sister. How could you?" Her eyes filled with tears, but they did nothing to soften me. She muttered, "I never wanted to hurt you. I don't know how it happened, but I knew exactly how it happened. It happened because boundaries were crossed and excuses were made. It happened because two people I trusted decided their desires were more important than my trust." Anger surged through me, hot and unrelenting. "You both made choices. Don't stand here and tell me it just happened." The room fell into chaos then, my husband trying to explain, her begging me to understand, and me, caught in the middle of their words, feeling like I was drowning. I slammed my hand against the table to silence them, my voice breaking as I shouted, "You destroyed me. Both of you." For a moment, no one moved. And then, something in me broke. The tears came, unstoppable, and I left the table, retreating to the bedroom where I locked the door and collapsed onto the bed. My body shook with sobs I couldn't control. That night, I barely slept. Even if I forgave him, even if she begged for my friendship again, things could never return to what they were. The foundation had cracked beyond repair. The fallout wasn't just about losing a husband or a best friend. It was about losing the life I thought I had, the stability, the trust, the family I had built in my mind. And in its place, all I had left was silence, heartbreak, and the terrifying question of what now. After the storm came the silence, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that echoes, that presses down on you until you can barely breathe. My home felt empty, even when he was still there. My phone felt foreign in my hand, the contact list haunted by her name I couldn't bring myself to delete. Every corner of my life carried traces of them, reminders of what once was and what had been broken beyond repair. The days that followed blurred together. I went through the motions of living, but inside, I felt hollow. I couldn't look at my husband without seeing her in his eyes, couldn't walk into a room without imagining the laughter they once shared in secret. I tried to eat, but food tasted like ash. I tried to sleep, but dreams betrayed me with images of them together. For a while, I isolated myself. I stopped answering calls, avoided mutual friends, and shut out anyone who tried to comfort me. I didn't want pity, and I didn't want advice. I wanted answers, answers to questions that had no satisfying response. Why her? Why me? Why us? But pain, as unbearable as it is, has a way of pushing you toward growth. One evening, after crying until my body felt weak, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, my face pale, my spirit broken. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't keep living like this. If I let their betrayal consume me, I would lose more than a husband and a best friend. I would lose myself. So I started small. I journaled every morning, pouring out the anger, the sadness, the betrayal onto paper where it couldn't weigh as heavily on my chest. I went for long walks, breathing in the fresh air, forcing myself to remember that the world was bigger than my heartbreak. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected, people who reminded me that not everyone would betray me, that love and loyalty still existed outside of the wounds they left behind. My husband tried, in his own way, to mend things. He offered counseling, begged for forgiveness, promised to change. But I knew forgiveness wasn't something I could give, not then, maybe not ever. The wound was too deep, the scar too fresh. Staying felt like betraying myself, and I had been betrayed enough already. As for her, my former best friend, she reached out too. Messages I ignored, apologies I couldn't bear to read. Her name popping up on my phone felt like salt in an open wound. Whatever bond we once shared had been shattered, and I wasn't ready to sift through the shards. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. It wasn't about moving on quickly or finding someone new. It was about learning to stand again on my own, to trust myself after trusting the wrong people had left me broken. Picking up the pieces wasn't clean or easy. Some days, I felt like I was making progress. Other days, I felt like I was drowning all over again. But each step, each journal entry, each walk, each conversation with someone who cared, was a reminder that I still had worth, that I was still here. That betrayal might have broken my heart, but it didn't have to break me. Time didn't erase the pain, it softened it. The sharp sting of betrayal eventually dulled into something less consuming, something I could carry without breaking under the weight. Healing wasn't a straight line. It was messy, filled with setbacks and breakthroughs. But slowly, I found myself learning lessons I never expected, lessons carved into me by heartbreak, but ones that shaped me into someone stronger than I had ever been. The first lesson was about trust. I had given it so freely before, handing over pieces of myself without hesitation, believing that love and friendship were unshakable. Now I understood that trust isn't just about giving, it's about protecting. I learned to set boundaries, to listen to my instincts, and to respect the quiet warnings I once ignored. The second lesson was about identity. For so long, I had defined myself by my relationships, wife, best friend, partner in someone else's story. When those roles crumbled, I was forced to look inward and ask, who am I without them? The answer didn't come easily, but with each passing day, I discovered pieces of myself I had forgotten. My creativity, my independence, my resilience. I realized I wasn't just someone's wife or someone's best friend. I was me, and that was enough. The third lesson was about love, not the romantic kind, but the kind I had neglected for years, self-love. It's easy to forget yourself when you're pouring everything into others. Betrayal forced me to stop, to look at myself with compassion instead of criticism. I learned to celebrate small victories, to forgive myself for not seeing the signs sooner, and to remind myself daily that being broken didn't mean I was unworthy of love. Moving forward wasn't about revenge, nor was it about pretending the betrayal never happened. It was about acceptance. Accepting that people can disappoint us in unimaginable ways. Accepting that relationships can end, even when you thought they were unbreakable. And accepting that endings, as painful as they are, can also be beginnings. I didn't have all the answers about what my future would hold. Maybe I would find love again, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would one day forgive them, or maybe forgiveness wasn't necessary for my healing. What mattered was that I had survived, and survival itself was a kind of victory. One day, I walked past a cafe where my husband and I used to go, and instead of crumbling, I smiled faintly. The memory was still there, but it no longer had power over me. Another day, I saw her name flash across my phone, and instead of anger, I felt nothing, and that nothing was freedom. The betrayal that once defined me became just one chapter in my story, not the whole book. And as I moved forward, I carried the lessons with me, not as chains, but as armor. Because in the end, heartbreak didn't destroy me. It transformed me. And though I never would have chosen this path, I walked out of it stronger, wiser, and finally free to write the rest of my story on my own terms.